Good afternoon. Welcome to the fiscal year 2022 Students in the Care of DC Out of School Time Coordinating Entity at the Youth Services Center Grant Information Center. I am Vania Bowie, Supervisory Grants Management Specialist, and I will lead the grant information session today, along with my colleague, Deborah Eichenbaum, who will pick up in a few. Next slide, please. All right, the government of the District of Columbia is committed to supporting students in preparing for a bright future. In service of that commitment, the district is seeking to support strong nonprofit organizations that provide students with high quality programming. The grant awards are contingent upon the availability of funds. Scope of the grant. The 2022 Students in the Care of DC Out of School Time Coordinating Entity at the Youth Service Center, RFA, invites high-performing, fiscally responsible nonprofits to apply for this competition. Organizations applying must demonstrate 1, experience managing and coordinating enrichment or youth programming. 2, experience managing subcontractors or willingness to work with subcontractors. 3, the ability to implement evidence-based practices that support positive youth development. And 4, have experience working in a secure facility. All right, some additional information on the scope of the grant. This RFA is being offered in partnership with the Department of Youth and Rehabilitative Services. The intent of this RFA is to select one coordinating entity that will manage a high quality OST program and manage subcontractors to provide evidence-based, educational, social, emotional, and physical health opportunities and activities for youth at the Youth Services Center, which we will call YSC. Organizations applying must serve youth through the positive youth development approach. Organizations applying must have experience working with justice system involved students. The students in the care are typically between the ages of 12 and 20 years of age. Information about the program. For the purposes of this RFA, an OST program is defined as a structured, supervised learning or youth development opportunity offered to students at the YSC. The program must operate at least 2 hours per day, 3 days a week, for 34 weeks, from October 2021 through June 2020. The program must also operate during school breaks and provide programming on weekends. In addition, the program must provide each youth participant with the access to a similar community-based program after release from the Youth Services Center in order to provide the youth participant with the continuum of programming services. Total amount of funding. The grant awards are from a federal source, and grantees must be able to be compliant with federal requirements. The OST office anticipates awarding one grant up to $210,000 to coordinate the OST program at the YSC. Applicants may request up to $210,000. The OST office maintains the right to adjust the number of the grant awards and award amounts. Grant awards are contingent upon the availability of funds. Now we're going to talk about youth development outcomes. To help prepare youth to succeed, DYRS infuses its culture with the principles of positive youth development and positive youth justice. Research shows that the best way to enhance long-term public safety is to provide court-involved youth with the tools they need to successfully transition into adulthood. All aspects of DYRS culture, from staff training to youth programs to the agency's accountability mechanisms, are infused with the belief that youth can change. Youth development is a process that prepares youth to meet the challenges of childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, and achieve his or her full potential by offering activities and experiences that help develop social, emotional, physical, cognitive, and spiritual competencies. Positive youth development is a method that engages youth within their communities, schools, organizations, peer groups, and families in a manner that is productive and constructive, recognizes, utilizes, and enhances youth strengths, and promotes positive outcomes for youth by providing opportunities, fostering positive relationships, and offering supports to build on youth strengths and assets. Positive youth justice applies positive youth development theories in a juvenile justice setting and uses a strength-based approach to serving youth. PYJ emphasizes personal accountability and skill development. Thank you. PYJ focuses on the following developmental needs of youth involved in the youth justice system. We will go over some of these in depth. So work experience, apprenticeships, employment readiness, income, and independence. For education, that includes literacy, credentials, learning skills, and career planning. Health, physical activity, diet and nutrition, mental and behavioral health, and lifestyle. Relationships, communication skills, conflict resolution, family systems, intimacy, and support. For community, that is civic engagement, community leaderships, services, and responsibility. Creativity, personal expression, visual arts, performing arts, and language arts. The applicant must be able to coordinate the enrichment program with subcontractors that have the ability to deliver the program through the PYD and PYJ approach. The PYJ approach, for the PYJ approach, DYS youth are being rearrested and fewer are being reconvicted. These precedent-setting year-to-year reductions are occurring while the agency is meeting its legal mandate to place youth in the least restrictive, most home-like environment consistent with public safety. And that's what we want to continue to support. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, there's also a component of an evidence-based introduction included in this RFA. So to receive the maximum grant award, applicants must have a history of using an evidence-based intervention that supports academic, social, emotional learning or other youth development outcomes. The evidence-based intervention should meet the American Rescue Plan Act criteria and is defined as strategies and interventions that demonstrate a statistically significant effect on improving student outcomes or other relevant outcomes that are based on strong evidence from at least one well-designed and well-implemented experimental study, or one moderate moderate evidence from at least one well-designed and one well-implemented quasi-experimental study, or promising evidence from at least one well-designed and well-implemented correlational study with statistical controls for selection bias, or demonstrate a rationale based on high-quality research findings or positive evaluation that such activities, strategies, or interventions are likely to improve student outcomes or other relevant outcomes, and include ongoing efforts to examine the effects of such activities, strategies, or intervention. Please see the U.S. Department of Education's guidance on using evidence to strengthen education investments for more information. If the applicant seeks the maximum award amount, a one-page citation or bibliography of the research supporting the evidence intervention must be submitted. Please submit a one-page bibliography in addition to the narrative for requesting the maximum award amount. Next slide, please. Now we're going to talk about the target population at the YSC. So one grant will be awarded to an organization that has the ability to serve students at the YSC between the ages of 12 to 20 years old, as we mentioned. Because the population at the YSC is highly variable and transient, the population fluctuates frequently, and the length of stay for youth varies. There are 4 different distinct populations to be served. One is youth charged as adults. Those are considered Title 16 youth. The typical length of stay at YSC is 6 to 12 months. Population size, 25. Age range there is 16 to 20. And the grade range is 9 through 12 and GED students. The second target population is secure detained youth. The typical length of stay, is 14 to 21 days. The population size is generally 13, age range 12 to 18, and the grade range is 7th to 12th grade. The next target population is awaiting placement youth. Their typical length of stay is 30 to 45 days. Population size is 10, age range 14 to 18, and grade range is also 7 through 12. And finally, the fourth category is female identifying youth. Population size 5, age range 4 to 18, and the grade range is 9th through 12th grade. Applicant must be able to serve up to a maximum of 60 youth per day throughout the grant period, understanding the variable population. Applicant must maintain an adult to participant ratio of at least 1 to 15 at all times, unless a lower ratio is required by the district. The grant and program period. The grant period is from October 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022. The school year enrichment programming must take place between October 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022. Specific weeks may be determined by the OST office and/or DYRS. I'm going to talk about programming dosage. For the purposes of this RFA, OST programming is defined as structured supervised learning or youth development opportunity offered to students at the YSC for the dosage previously described. Preference will be given. Did we skip a slide here? Sorry. No. All right. Thank you. Preference will be given to programs that can include operation during school breaks and weekends. In addition, the program must provide each youth with access to a similar community-based program after release from the YSC in order to provide the youth participant with a continuation of programming when they leave the YSC. There are also some COVID-19 requirements here. So YSC is a congregate environment, and therefore all staff on site will be required to follow the health protocols required by the DC Department of Health and the DYRS. I will go ahead and transition to my colleague, Deborah Eichenbaum, to take it from here.
Thank you so much, Fania. I appreciate it. Okay, so we're gonna jump into eligibility and requirements. I do want to say if anyone has any questions, you can enter them into the chat box, or you can, we'll get to questions and answers in a little bit. And thank you, Alex, in advance for running my slides. Okay, organizational requirements. Organizations must have a 501c3 nonprofit status as determined by the IRS for a minimum of 2 years at the time of submission. That means that you must be a nonprofit for at least 2 years. and the organizations must be incorporated and registered to operate in the district and provide valid basic business license, certificate of good standing, and a clean hands certificate. Organizations should have a history of managing federal funds. If the applicant is a prior Learn24 grantee, the applicant must be compliant with all prior grant agreements. The good standing and clean hands documents should be currently valid and not more than 1 year old, and the basic business license should be currently valid. Programmatic focus and experience. Organizations' primary vision and program focus must be on serving district youth with intentional opportunities that help youth reach developmental outcomes and have meaningful roles in their community. Organizations must clearly define how the outputs and outcomes will be measured. Additionally, organizations must have demonstrated success managing youth programs for youth involved in the juvenile justice system. The district is seeking coordinating entities that will subcontract with DC community-led entities to provide a rich variety of experiences for youth. Financial requirements. Organizations must show a strong history of managing federal funds or demonstrate the ability to manage federal funds. And you must also provide copies as follows: 2 years of the most recent balance sheet and income statement, 2 years of the most recent 990 form and any schedules filed, a board-approved organization budget, a program budget, 1 year of the most recent audit conducted by an independent CPA and completed within the last 12 months, and grantees must have financial management protocols to comply with the federal regulations. Grantees must also have cash management procedures and written allowability procedures. Grant fund limitations. There is a complete list in the RFA of all grant fund limitations, but a few other things also to note. Grant funds may only be used to support YSC youth. A minimum of 40% of the grant amount must be used for subcontractors to provide services directly to the youth to provide a robust enrichment program, which means that 40% of the grant funds will be used as the coordinating entity. You will subcontract with other entities to help provide those services. The coordinating entity will not provide all of the services themselves. Grant funds may not be used with other District of Columbia government grants to serve the same students in the same program at the same locations. And there are requirements for the purchase of equipment and computing devices per federal regulations. If an applicant plans to use grant funds for equipment or computing devices, please describe the specific purchases and the need for the equipment or computing devices. A list of potential subcontractors will be provided to the grantee once grant agreements are final. Program expenses. The Nonprofit Fair Compensation Act allows for a grantee to apply a federally negotiated indirect cost rate agreement. It's called a NICRA. If an applicant has one, please submit that with your documentation. And if an applicant does not have one, the de minimis indirect rate is 10%. Okay. Moving on to the application, since I don't see any questions. Application submission. Applications and attachments must be submitted by Monday, September 20th at 5 o'clock. successfully submitted applications will receive a confirmation notice via the browser upon completion. Applicants should print the confirmation as evidence of submission. Applications without a confirmation or without evidence of submission, late applications or incomplete applications will not be reviewed. You can print out that confirmation when it comes up. You can take a screenshot of it or even a photo on your phone, but in some way you should document that you have received that successful submission of your application. Submissions with any missing application attachments are considered incomplete and will not be reviewed. The application will not be reviewed if the applicant fails to submit all required documents. Additional documents not requested will not be reviewed and will be removed from the application materials. Documents that exceed the page limitations will also not be reviewed. So for the narrative, responses should be written according to the sections in the same order to receive maximum point allocation. Organizing the narrative by sections with the corresponding header is suggested. The narrative includes the budget narrative, but the actual budget calculations may be separate documents and will not count toward the maximum number of pages. So when I talk about the specific headers, that's exactly what we tell reviewers. So if an answer is found in a separate section, a reviewer may not provide points for that because we tell them that all they need to do is score one section at a time. So please do the same thing and put all of the information that is asked in that section right there. It's possible that some of your sections may be duplicative. You may have the same information in a couple of sections, but that's okay as long as you are answering all of the questions in each section. Narrative format. The narrative must be formatted as follows: 1-inch margins, 11-point Times New Roman font, figures and captions can be in an 8-size font, number each page of the document consecutively, that is very important, use single spacing, the use of tables, graphs, or charts are permitted, but they also count toward the narrative page limit. And the application is a maximum of 10 pages. All of these details are important. Please follow the directions as provided in the RFA. Budget. I briefly said before how the budget can be separate, but budgets are a required part of the narrative. The financial attachment can be any length and any format, but the budget narrative is part of the 10 pages that that is part of the actual narrative. Provide both program and organization budgets. Detail how the grant award will be used. Describe other sources of funding and the status of those sources if they're pending or secured, and provide all necessary documentation. Important dates. So the RFA was released on August 20th. Today, August 31st, is the grant information session. September 14th is the last day that questions may be submitted. September 16th is the last day that answers to those questions will be published. And September 20th, completed applications are due electronically by 5 o'clock. The link is in the RFA. September, if needed, questions will be asked to the applicants to clarify any information provided. And in October, awards will be announced. Questions and answers. Please submit questions to the email address here, rfa.sy21-22@dc.gov, with the subject line that reads SCDC Coordinating Entity RFA. Submit those questions no later than September 14th. Questions and answers will be published beginning September 2nd and will be updated regularly as questions are received until the final publication date of September 16th. The review process. So the scoring rubric is attached to the RFA. The rubric consists of 4 sections. Each row will be scored from 1 to 4 points. The checkboxes are listed under each description. Excuse me. And the applicant will receive completed score sheets. I believe that is slated for November. Applicants will be reviewed on a 96-point scale. Section 1 is organization history, capacity, and relevant experience. Subcontractors is the next section, and that's worth 24 points. Details about the program is worth 40 points, and the budget is 16 points. Reviewers. Each proposal will be reviewed by 3 reviewers using the scoring rubric and there will be a consensus meeting. The OST office will recruit and accept reviewers who have a background and knowledge of youth development and out-of-school time programming. All reviewers will be screened for conflicts of interest. Each reviewer will receive training on how to score using the rubric. Please, at any time, anybody can apply to be a reviewer. It is a shameless plug for the OST office. We have lots and lots of RFAs that go out all the time. Please, if you don't know how and you really want to apply as a reviewer, just contact us at learn24.dc.gov, learn24@dc.gov. Yes, okay. You would not be able to review for an application. You would not be able to review applications for a competition that you have applied for, but as I've said, we have many other competitions. Thank you, Alex. So interview. The top 2 or 3 ranking applications will be invited. The applicants will be invited for an interview. The interview panel may include representatives from the Deputy Mayor for Education's office, DYRS, students, and families. The reviewer score and the interview score will be used to generate a final score. Priority points may be awarded to applicants that offer programming during weekend and school breaks. The district will make final award decisions based on the final score. The district may provide additional preferences and priorities in order to make final award decisions. Notification of awards. All applicants will be notified via email about the status of the award by October or sooner. Applicants will receive reviewer score sheets in November. Applicants should ensure that the email address listed here is on the list of acceptable email addresses to ensure receipt of emails related to this grant competition. I can't say this enough times. Please make sure that the email address listed here is on the list of email addresses accepted by your email, because that is how you will be contacted if the OST office has any questions or you're being awarded, whatever it might be, it will come from that email address. All funding decisions are final and are not subject to review appeal, or protest. Grantee requirements. Since the OST office is accountable to the taxpayers, we do have strict compliance measures. We also work very closely with our grantees to make sure that they're able to comply and try to ease the burden wherever possible. We believe in an open door policy and are happy to talk or answer questions at any time. We pride ourselves on being quite responsive and available. If awarded, a grantee will be required to attend grantee meetings and activities, participate in research and evaluation activities, comply with insurance requirements, participate in administrative and programmatic site visits, and provide required documentation, ensure that all staff acquire the required clearances, utilize the district's database known as CitySpan, provide programmatic updates and reports, provide financial documentation as required, and report all incidents as mandated. Confidentiality. DC Code mandates the confidentiality of juvenile records and the confidentiality of any and all information pertaining to juveniles associated with DYRS. The grantee must acknowledge and agree that confidential information will be shared and that the grantee shall hold all such confidential information in the strictest confidence as a fiduciary and shall not voluntarily sell, transfer, publish, disclose, display, or otherwise make available to any third person such confidential information or any portion thereof without the express written consent of the other party. DC Code further states that whoever willfully discloses, receives, makes use of, or knowingly permits the use of information concerning a child or other person in violation of sections 16.231 through section 16.2335 shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and upon conviction thereof shall be fined not more than $250 or imprisoned not more than 90 days or both. Violations of this section shall be prosecuted by the Attorney General in the name of the District of Columbia. Training and certification. The grantee must follow DYRS bullying prevention policies. The Youth Bullying Prevention Act provides information with respect to bullying prevention policies, codes of conduct, bullying investigations and appeals, the role of the Office of Human Rights, the complaint procedure, and related matters. Grantees must understand and comply with the policies established by DYRS at the YSC. And for programming, at least one person per site must have cardiopulmonary resuscitation and first aid training. And those certificates must be uploaded into CitySpan. Certification, training and certification continued. The grantee, staff, and vendors, including the subcontractors, are required to complete DYRS orientation, which includes safety and security. All staff are required to follow the security protocols established by DYRS. In addition, all vendors, staff, and contractors are required to wear personal protective equipment at all times while at the YSC. PPE shall be provided by DYRS. PPE includes, but is not limited to, face masks, face shields, and gloves. Additional security and safety requirements are listed in the RFA. Another training is the Prison Rape Elimination Act training. The The clothing limitations and unauthorized items are also more fully described in the RFA, institutional property, and confidentiality. Application tips. Make sure that the application follows the order in the RFA. I said that earlier. Use the headers, it's very helpful. Do not submit documents or materials that are not requested in the RFA. The budget narrative should be detailed. Please show the math and based on each line item in the budget. For example, if you're talking about providing workbooks for 20 youth, then put the cost of the workbook times 20, and that should be your total. Avoid general language, be detailed and specific, especially regarding the program activities and schedule, how you've used evaluation to improve your program, the community connection, and other revenue streams. Please make sure that someone can read your narrative and understand what the youth will experience in your program. It's always best to write it early and ask a friend or even a board member to read the application and score it using the attached rubric. And ask them to be tough. If they're just going to read it and give you straight 4s, they're not really doing you any favors and they're not being helpful. It is important to read the RFA carefully, not just the questions that are asked in the narrative. Use the rubric when responding to the questions asked, since that's exactly what the reviewers will be using when they are scoring the narrative. And again, that's the rfa.sy21-22@dc.gov email. Alex, I still don't see any questions. I don't know if you do. But
I do not see any questions as of now, but as always, if they have any questions, please feel free to email us at rfa.sy21-22@dc.gov, and we can assist you that way.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you, Vania, and thank you everybody for participating.
Thank you all.